Go.
All right.
I'm doing it without permission.
There you
It's
go.
telling me I don't
Rebel.
have permission. I'm
Rebel
going to
you.
just do it anyway. Yeah. Okay. So I am so happy. Well, it's nice to see you after it's been a while, right? It's been a
Yes, it
minute.
has. Yes, it has.
So thank
Yeah.
you so much for coming to talk today on this little segment of Storytime with Writers. And I, of course, had to have you this week because it's Memorial Day weekend and because your book is about this wonderful story of the family who made such a sacrifice in World War II. And I want to have you tell a little bit about that. But so, Mark is the author of So Costly a Sacrifice. And this is a true story of the Borgstrom family. What I love about this, Mark, when did we first cross paths? It was probably maybe 3, 4 years ago, longer. I
Yes.
don't know.
Yes. Yes.
At least.
That's yeah. At least. Yes. How time
Okay.
flies. Hmm.
So what I remember the most about our first conversations were, you just repeating quite often that you were not a writer, you were not a writer, you were not a writer, you were not a writer. you know? And so you've been an engineer for many, many years. Yeah. Electrical engineer or,
Yeah, we
um,
design. Yes, design. Actually,
okay.
design all different types of electrical equipment. Yes. Yeah. So
Okay.
more of a designer. Yes. Hmm.
Okay. But a veteran yourself, very interested in military history. So you had this passion to just, I mean, I guess tell us a little bit about how you got this idea to write this book, how you stumbled across this story. I guess first we need to say in a nutshell what this story is and why it's so amazing, and then how you happen to come across it and feel this pull to have to share it with the world, even though you considered yourself not a writer. And now we flash forward a couple of years. Your book has been out. You have gotten the Book of the Year award from the Chicago Writers Association. You just got another award from the Big Book Award from New York City Book Awards, I think,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
And you sold the option to a filmmaker. So, pretty good for someone who didn't want to write the book. So give us a little bit of just a summary about what it is, what the story is, and why it was so compelling to you.
For sure. Well, and I will say first and foremost that none of this would have happened had our paths not crossed for sure. So, I mean, you
Oh,
were
we
the
don't know
guiding,
that's
yeah,
true, but
yeah, yes,
but I was
yes,
happy to be part of it. Yeah.
and a big part of it. And yeah, so the story, it's like I said, it is you were correct. It's the true story of a family from World War II, the Borgstroms, and in less than 6 months, they lost four of their sons, and I think I believe in the book that we make the point that even the fifth son that came home, Boyd, um, his life was so affected by the war in so many ways that the war in some ways cost his life too. And so it really began. I didn't set out to write a book about the Borgstroms. It came about it in a roundabout way. My wife and I, Christine, we dabble in antiques, and so we went to a farm auction one year. This is probably around 2013, maybe 2014, and we of all things, there was a cabinet in a dairy barn, and we were checking the cabinet out and thinking about purchasing the cabinet, and so we're opening the drawers, and there was literally nothing in this cabinet, and until we opened the bottom drawer of this cabinet, and a flag had rolled forward in the drawer. And I unfurled the flag, and embarrassing, I will say I wasn't quite sure exactly what this flag was, but come to find out, it was a service flag. And so we ended up buying the cabinet. Most importantly, because we got the flag along with the cabinet. And when I got home, I started to do a little more research on the service flag, and and so it was ultimately what it was a Blue Star service flag, and which was a it was a flag that families hung in the window and still to this day, it's a tradition uh, that again, families hang this flag in their window when they have a loved one serving during the military during a time of war. And so I started to, as an antiquer, started to put together a collection of service flags. It just struck an interest with me, and we put together this massive collection of not only service flags, but all the different items that had the service flag, uh, um, displayed. So in other words, like posters and newspaper articles and press photographs. And so now we amass this incredible collection, and it's like, well, what do we do with it? I collected it because it was part of history, and it was meaningful to me. And so what we did is we started to do a road show, and we traveled to different venues. Excuse me. Ultimately, we traveled all over the country. We went to the VA hospital in Manhattan, New York. We went to Atlanta. We've put on these presentations at museums and schools and libraries, and we set up this massive display. And what we do is we talk about the history of the service flag, the tradition. We also present service flags. Being a veteran, I that's one of the things that I do for the American Legion, and we would also tell stories of our veterans. And so late one night, I was researching a story about the Sullivans. I was because that's one of the stories I often told, and just literally stumbled upon the Borgstroms. Never heard of
And
the
the
family.
Sullivans, just to clarify,
Hmm.
The Sullivans are the family that most people have heard of, right? Because they
Yes,
lost what, five sons in the
yes,
war?
yes,
And so the
yes. So
movies were made about them and they got all the sort of attention, right?
absolutely, absolutely. There was the Fighting Solvents was a movie that was
Yeah.
produced, books. In matter of fact, in World War II, there was a poster that had the Sullivan brothers on the poster, along with the service flag in the poster. And so I had never heard of the Borgstroms, and I started to do my research, and lo and behold, discovered that there was never anything written about this family and about their sacrifice. And so we ended up uh, traveling. Now the family's from Utah, and so through a whole process, we ended up out in Utah, and I was fortunate enough to meet members of the family, and well, when we were out there, the family took us to um, different places. They took us to the farmhouse where the family lived. They took us to the church where they had the services for the boys when they brought them home in 1948. And then the last place that they took us was the cemetery where the mother and the father and the four boys are buried. And I don't know what it something came out of me, and as we're standing there at the grave sites, I made a promise to the family that I was going to write their story, and I had no idea what I was getting into, quite honestly. Um,
Right.
but certainly, that's not a promise that you don't keep, and so
That's one
oh
way to write a book, right?
yeah, that's one
Just
way to.
make a
that,
grandiose promise to somebody
that's
that you
right.
can't break, and then you have to quickly learn how to become a writer. I like
That's
that
right.
method.
That's right. And just through absolute struggles, just struggle. And uh it was until I met you, quite honestly, it was just a very, very I really had no direction. And didn't quite know how to tell the story. And like I said, thankfully I crossed paths with you, and you were the guiding light in the whole process. Um so here we
Well,
are.
I have to say, the unique thing about you was that your passion for it was such a driving force. I mean, this obviously matters a lot to you. You had such a sense of integrity around wanting to bring this family story to a wider public to let people know about it, and your ability to research and just get in there and dig into all of this, and like you said, travel to Utah, meet the family. And I know you went to Washington and you did a lot of research. And in fact, I was looking at some of your your reviews for the book on Amazon this morning, and one of them says, I was hooked from the very beginning and read the book through in 2 sittings. It was obvious that Mr. Hudson had put an immense amount of time into researching this book and writing it from his heart. So I think that really does come through, and a lot of the reviews say that as well. So, maybe you felt you didn't start off with a lot of experience writing, but you brought a lot to the table, right? With that motivation, that passion, that drive, the ability to sit down and dig into the story. And again, it's all about storytelling, right? You had the story
Mhm.
to tell. You knew the facts you wanted to share. You're very meticulous about the facts. So yeah, just putting it together is just one more piece of it, right? And maybe that
Sure.
is not necessarily, you haven't written a lot of prose or written a manuscript, but I think those other pieces are, those are important skills to have, and you had those. So
Yeah, and I will say, it was you know, people say, you talk, I've talked to many people at a lot of a lot of the venues that we've done book signings at, and so many people said, oh yeah, I'm going to write a book. I'm writing a book, and now and this last one, I had a guy come up. He says, I've written some drafts, and I'd like you to read it. And I just kind of chuckle. It's like, this is not me. And then part of me says, boy, oh, you have no idea what you're getting into. And but
it's a secret. We don't tell people who are starting to write books what they're getting into. Don't you know? You got to, secret handshake. You got to take the oath.
this is true. And but the other part for me was it was a constant, constant pressure to get it right for the family. Because and that was really, at the end of the day, that is who I had to make sure who was that they were satisfied with what was written. Because, and I've often said, I was just a conduit for their story. And that was also a driving force, was to make sure that, what was done, what was written was, again, like you say, factual, meaningful, and was accepted by the family. And that it was. So we hit a
Yeah.
home run on that one. Yeah.
Well, I hope you can serve as a good inspiration for people who, you know, maybe do have this drive or this motivation or get inspired by someone else's story. I mean, most often, like personally, the people that I talk to usually have their own story, right? They want to write a
Mm.
memoir, or they're writing fiction or something they've come up with on their own. So I think it's less common to at least for that I would meet someone like you who has someone else's story, and you have just as much drive and passion to tell their story and to do justice to it. But I think that's a good reminder that there may be other people out there who think, yeah, I do want to write somebody else's story. And there's a way to do that, and even if maybe you're not a seasoned writer, as we both know, and now, writing a successful book is not just done by one person. I mean, there are people
Absolutely.
behind the scenes, there are
Hmm.
helpers, there are people that you can turn to for different aspects of it, and there are a lot of different aspects of it, and no one person can be an expert in all those things. So just to know that you can get help, or have guidance in different areas, and still tell the story that you want to tell, because as we always say, story is queen or king, right? The story
Mm.
reigns supreme. We're all here to serve the story. Like, we love stories. So yeah, I think that's the thing that's really special, is you knew there was a story to be told, and you were like, come hell or high water, I'm telling it.
Yes. And the one thing, and I think you even asked me at one point in the very beginning, like, I don't know, you certainly not word for word, but like, how are you going to feel when it's done? Is this something you always wanted to do? So, and at first, when I was, when you're really in the depths of writing, it's, part of it is just, you know, you, you know, it is an enjoyable process at times. I found myself to be extremely frustrated at other times. Um, but I will say, and I never thought this when I was in the beginning and most of the way through it, the personal sense of accomplishment when it was done was I didn't, for some reason I didn't expect it. And it's, and maybe it was one of the things that one of the comments that I hold very dear, um, is Randy Borgstrom. He was, so the one son who came home, his name was Boyd, and he had 5 children, and he had 2 sons, and one son was Randy. And over the years over the years that we were writing, I would reach out to Randy, and I would say over the 3+ years of solid writing, um, we only had maybe two interactions over that whole time. And I will say it was a little frustrating because I'm trying to get information, right? I'm trying to, because the facts, I want to make sure we tell it, as factual as possible. And as I thought about it later, I could understand where he was most likely coming from. Was, first of all, he had to be like, well, who is this guy from Illinois, coming out to Utah? He's going to write about our family. What does he know? Why does he want to do it? Um, and then second of all, think about, I'm writing about his family. And so through that whole process, him and I had very little correspondence. Um, and when the book was finally published, I sent him one of the very first copies, and he wrote me this letter, and it's such an incredible letter. And at the very end of the letter, he says you're a Borgstrom brother to me. Welcome to the family. And I mean, if
Wow.
that's not, yeah, if that's not, um, if that doesn't make you feel good, that we did right, and what we did was good. And that's one of the, by far, that is the best compliment that I could have ever received. No,
Wow. That's
yeah.
huge. Yeah. And it's interesting because you people who do set out to write other stories, you are typically journalists, right? Or
Mhm.
write nonfiction or have some sort of background in that. And so I know that was a bit of a challenge because there was that imposter syndrome. Like I'm just this guy, I'm just this engineer, I'm not a writer, and I mean, you're a veteran, and that, but you had, like I said, you had that passion, and it shows in the final product. But I understand that on the way there is
Mhm.
that sense of like, like if you had called up and said, hey, I write, I write for the Wall Street Journal, or I've been a journalist for 35 years or whatever, that's different, right? You feel like you
Mhm.
get sort of an entree into somebody's story. You didn't have any of that.
Yeah,
So, it was not easy at times, but again, like just that genuine sense of, I'm interested, I'm not out to gain anything from this. I just really want to tell what happened,
sure.
and tell it as factually as possible. So
Yeah, and,
yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to say I want to tell people to pick this up, especially for this weekend, for Memorial Day. It's a great time to hop on the website, and it's a quick read. I mean,
Hmm.
because it is so readable, and I love how you share your story too, the beginning and the end of how you know had and I know we had to fight about that a little bit too, right? Or not fight, but it's like put yourself in there. And you're like, no, it's not about me. But that part was so interesting, just the personal, again, that personal dedication that you brought to it, and that drive of you wanting to tell the story. I thought that had to be part of the story because it is so interesting.
A couple of neat things that have come out of it too is, that what we've been able to give the family, not only the story, telling their story, but they're just one instance is the grandkids, of Gunda and Albin. They remember in the farmhouse there was a letter that hung in the hallway that was written to the family, to the mother and father, from President Roosevelt at the time. And over years, like many things disappear, right? Nobody knew. They heard of the letter. Like I said, the grandkids, they remember seeing it. Um,
Yeah.
and but it was when I went to President Roosevelt, his library in Hyde Park, New York, and it just so happened that in his library he had a folder of no more than probably 30 documents in this folder. And in the folder was the actual draft of the letter that was sent to the family. So I was able to, I was able now to make copies of this letter and give that to the family. So
Wow.
things like, those are just, you know, very sentimental, very sentimental things that have come out of this. So
Yes. Oh, that's wonderful.
yeah.
So, how are you going to spend this Memorial Day, or what does this holiday mean to you? What do you typically do on this weekend?
It's certainly. I mean, first and foremost, it's a Memorial Day is a day of remembrance, right, for all the fallen soldiers. That's first and foremost. We typically do, like I mentioned, my wife and I, we do antiques. We dabble in antiques, so we typically do a show up in Cedarburg, Wisconsin. So that's what we'll spend our Sunday doing. And then Monday, they always put a very nice Memorial Day parade in the town of Cedarburg. So we'll take part in the parade and then just rest the remaining part of the day. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Right. Well, that sounds like fun. Sounds like a little slice of Americana. And having
it
been to
is.
Cedarburg, I could just imagine what a cute parade and cute little setting that'll be for that.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
always do a wonderful job. They really do. And then they have
Yeah.
once after the Memorial Day parade, they have a ceremony over at the American Legion, and they certainly do it right. They certainly do it right. So
Nice.
yeah. So
Nice. Well, enjoy. Have a great weekend. I'm so glad we got a chance to chat. And I
likewise.
really highly recommend anyone who's interested in military history and, even just, I mean, I was very touched by this story just from the point of view of a mother having lost her sons, so many sons like that. It checks a lot of boxes. It's a great read. So pick it up and, we'll talk another time. And I know you'll probably be hot on the trail of some other story at some point. So
Oh yes. Oh yes.
we'll wait to see what that is.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Tammy.
Yeah. All right. Well, happy Memorial Day and talk soon.
Thank you so much.
Take
Right.
care.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.